against Isaiah Parker under indictment 25230. We have adjourned this matter to today's date for a report on the people's pretrial offer. After conferring with the attorneys here at the bench, it's my understanding that offer has been amended to a degree, and Mr. Durovich, you were seeking one brief additional adjournment to confer with your client before reporting. Do I have that right?
Yes, Judge. December 2nd, please.
We'll adjourn the matter at your request to December 2nd at 9:30 a.m. for a report on that offer. If the matter is not resolved that day, do bring your motions to the file on December 2nd. I'll see you back here then, Mr. Parker.
Thank you, Judge.
Farina.
This is the matter of the people against Anthony Farina, indictment 25035. This matter is on for sentencing today. I'll note I do have a number of requests again from the news media, but I've addressed this previously, effectively told them that they could cover today's proceedings unless I heard an objection to the contrary. Is there any objection from the parties?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Beato?
No, sir.
Court will permit the same. As I said, we're on for sentencing. It's back on September 22nd. The defendant did plead guilty to one count of manslaughter in the first degree, the agreed upon sentence being 22 years in state prison with 5 years of post-release supervision, a waiver of appeal, and mandatory state surcharges. Is that the people's understanding?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Beato, that's your understanding? The people move sentence?
People still move, Your Honor.
Would you like to be heard?
Yes, Your Honor. Before I speak, there are two statements that I'd like to read onto the record. The first being from Robert Jr., the victim's son. Last December, I watched you beat my father to death on camera. You showed my father no mercy at all. You treated my dad like he was an object and not a human. Watching your actions on camera felt like I was stuck in a horror movie, and you guys were the monsters. I felt broken, and there was nothing I could do. I will never get my dad back. I pray your loved ones never have to endure the kind of pain I experienced. All of this could have been avoided if you and your fellow officers just did your job. My dad would be alive. I pray this case teaches others that they can't treat incarcerated people like animals. I pray this case sparks real conversation about the need for change to the prison system that you are entering. This time, we're in green instead of blue. Now, Your Honor, I will read the statement from Jared Ricks, the brother of the victim. Good morning. My name is Jared Ricks, and I am the brother of Robert Brooks. My brother was my idol growing up. He was wise beyond his years, had a heart of gold, and lit up any room he walked in. I will not allow these fateful final moments to define his legacy. Over the last 11 months, my family has felt so many emotions. Grief, anger, resentment, hopelessness are all at the top of that list. Witnessing someone you love being treated with such cruelty by the correctional officers of the New York State Department of Corrections and Community Supervision has opened our eyes to the atrocities transpiring behind those walls. My brother's situation was an anomaly. Not because these organized beatings of incarcerated individuals don't happen. We know that they do. But because the 30-minute recording of the body worn cameras exists. We've heard countless stories that mirror the events of December 9th, 2024, but justice was not served. Today, we get justice. Today, we heal just a little bit, knowing that you are no longer authoritative figures of this system that failed Robert Brooks. You will now have a unique experience of going from officer to convict. As you men begin your journey into the New York State Department of Corrections, I hope your welcome committee shows more grace than you gave my brother on December 9th of 2024. Your Honor, we would just ask that these statements be incorporated to the following sentences of the other co-defendants. We won't reread those for each one of those sentences. Your Honor, I'll just briefly follow up with a statement from the people. And Judge, obviously there's not much more that I can say that the family, Mr. Ricks and Mr. Brooks, haven't already. And it is important that we now get to shift our gear to the focus of the victim and what happened to him. This entirety of this investigation and this trial and these pleas and sentences were focused on the defendants. They're focused on their atrocities and their actions. And I think Mr. Ricks and Mr. Brooks appropriately stated who their father and who their brother was. And that's important to know. It's because in their image, in their eyes, we get to see the man that Mr. Brooks was. We get a sense of who he could have been, not for him coming across these individuals. When we circle back to the beginning of this investigation, we get a deeper look into the Department of Corrections and what goes on in the correctional facility. And unfortunately, Mr. Brooks came across Mr. Farina on that date. Mr. Brooks, in search of safety and security because of experiences that he was enduring in the Mohawk Correctional Facility, it came to light that he was seeking safety and protection from the wrong place, unfortunately. That when he received that welcoming committee, it was not from the individuals that were supposed to be protecting him, and yet it was those individuals that became his abusers. Throughout the investigation, you'll see, or we've seen, that he's beaten, he is broken, he's unprotected, he's unsafe, and these men took advantage of that, of a man in that dire straits. And it is unfortunate that we won't be able to see what Mr. Brooks would have done with his life after he exited that facility. We have gotten to know Mr. Brooks and Mr. Ricks very well throughout this process, and I've heard a lot about who their loved one was, and I got to see who he was in their eyes and how they spoke about him and who the men they are. And I can only imagine that Mr. Brooks would have been the same if given that opportunity. Judge, these correctional officers are in a facility and doing a very hard job. And in this investigation, it is said many times that they are living the same life as those individuals when they go behind that wall. But the truth of the matter is, Your Honor, the expectations of these officers are different. They are held to a higher standard. They are behind that walls to be better, to do better, to help individuals be better once they are released. This investigation has shed light that is not happening, that did not happen, that they took away that opportunity from Mr. Brooks. It said in the statement that they hope that he gets treated better than their loved one was. And truly speaking, Judge, I don't know if that will happen. But I will say, and I will echo that I've said to the family, that the death of Mr. Brooks has shed light on that. So at least now we know there is a potential that these things won't happen again, and that these individuals, these incarcerated individuals, these men and women serving their time will be granted that opportunity to be better once they leave. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Woodcourt. Mr. Rihanna, would you like to be heard?
Your Honor, just briefly. I come to know Anthony well throughout this case. What appears on body-worn camera is not the man I know. For 24 and a half years, he served in the New York State Department of Corrections as an officer, one of the most demanding, dangerous jobs in public service. An environment where officers are routinely berated, assaulted, and placed in harm's way. Having served in that role myself, I understand firsthand the toll that takes. Despite those conditions, Anthony served with honor, professionalism, and courage. His personal record reflects multiple accommodations, including several occasions where he intervened and rescued inmates. Outside of his service to the state, he's been a devoted husband for more than 20 years. He has raised 3 children who are positive, productive members of this community. From the outset, Anthony has expressed genuine remorse. He understands that the situation here deteriorated regardless of the circumstances unfolding, and he knows he should have intervened. While friends and family urged him to continue fighting these charges, he insisted on taking responsibility and directing the result of this case. Some may attempt to define him solely what occurred on December 9th, 2024. But that isolated moment does not erase a lifetime of honorable service, personal sacrifice, and meaningful contribution. His character, his career, the way he's lived his life, the family he's raised, speaks truly to who he is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gatto. Mr. Farina, was there anything that you want to say prior to being sentenced? Well, for the record, the defendant did waive his right to appeal at the time of his plea, so I'll not be going over those rights again. One thing I want to clarify, I did receive your sentencing memorandum, Mr. Riato, and with the number of statements on Mr. Farina's behalf that were attached there too, there was one overriding theme in a great many of them, which implored me to show leniency and impose a sentence less than was agreed to by the parties. So we're all very clear and very much on the same page. This is an agreed upon sentence. This is an agreement that was reached between the prosecution and the defense. At this juncture, this court has no authority for the people's asking to sentence to a minute more than was agreed to, or for anyone else is asking to sentence to a minute less than was agreed to. The agreed upon sentence is what will be imposed here today. As to the conviction for manslaughter in the first degree, the defendant is hereby sentenced to a determinate sentence of 22 years in state prison. In addition, there is imposed 5 years of post-release supervision, along with a mandatory surcharge, crime victim, and DNA fees, which will total $375. The defendant is committed for the term of the sentence.
Your Honor, for that completion of the record, that will be released at this time.
The bail will be released, however, the proposed form you sent to me suggested that I was returning that to you, but it was posted by a Diane Farina.
Correct.
It'll be returned to Diane Farina.
Understood. Thank you.
Nicholas Anzalone.
This is the matter of the people against Nicholas Anzalone, indictment 25035. This matter is on for sentencing. As back on September 22nd, the defendant pled guilty to 1 count of manslaughter in the first degree, with the agreed upon sentence being 22 years in state prison with 5 years post-release supervision, a waiver of appeal, and surcharges. Is that the people's understanding?
It is, Your Honor.
Counsel, that's your understanding?
It is, Judge.
Do the people then move sentence?
People so move, Your Honor.
Would you like to be heard?
Briefly, Your Honor, as I previously stated, we were provided the impact statement that I read, and I would just like, for the record, that that be attached to this sentencing with Mr. Angelone as well. And again, Judge, I won't belabor any of the points that I've already stated under Mr. Farina's sentencing, but, you know, Your Honor, I think it is important that while we have seen the videos, the relevant videos in this case many times, both in the media, in the trial, and throughout this investigation, and truthfully speaking, I don't want to harp on that video any more than we have to, because it was traumatic for all that have watched. It was obviously traumatic for the family experiencing the loss of their loved one and having to essentially relive his death every time that was played. And I don't want to add to that, but there is something important that needs to be noted as it relates to this defendant in reviewing that video, and it isn't necessarily all of the violent attacks and assaults and abusive behavior that he inflicted on the victim. Your Honor, what is really troubling and what really affects the people in this situation is the face and expressions of Mr. Angelone during that assault. Of all of the defendants and all of the individuals that were present and or assisting in that assault, Mr. Anzalone seemed to be the one that got enjoyment from it. There seems to be many points during that assault where it was not only gratuitous, but it was enjoyable. Now, that is one of the most concerning things about this case and the Department of Corrections as it stands right now, and the atrocities that go on in those facilities. That there are individuals like Mr. Anzalone who aren't trying to maintain order, that aren't trying to restrain individuals for safety of other officers or other incarcerated individuals, but are using force because he can, because he enjoys it, because they are at his will. Again, Your Honor, the family has spoken on many occasions about their loved one, about Mr. Brooks. And you can see in the video as well, he was slight. He seemed like a very kind-hearted person, and his loved ones echo that and express that and confirm that. That meant nothing to Mr. Anzalone because he did not see Mr. Brooks. He did not see the potential in Mr. Brooks. He saw someone that he could control and that he could dominate. That is what's troubling about this case and this investigation and this defendant. And it was stated in the impact statement that there's hope that he is treated better than Mr. Brooks was, and that there is a potential or a hope that he doesn't get the welcoming committee, and I do hope that as well, Your Honor. And I do hope that he is afforded an opportunity to be better and grow from his experience when he is inside. But truly, I fear that he will and has learned nothing, because a person that we saw do what he did on that video and take the pleasure in that is someone that I don't think is redeemable at all. And I think that his time inside is for the benefit of this community, because the community and others needed protection from him that Mr. Brooks couldn't get. Thank you.
Counsel, would you like to hear before sentencing?
Briefly before comments, Judge, I have character reference letters that I previously provided this morning to the District Attorney's Office. I wonder if we'd be able to ask that they accompany the pre-sentence report along with them.
Are those above and beyond what was already forwarded to me by email?
Mr. Sofranco had forwarded them.
Yes.
Do you know when that was? Apologies.
Yesterday. I've been being peppered with those one after another right through yesterday, and I did attach each of those to the pre-sentence investigation already.
Perfect, Judge. Then I appreciate that. The other aspect is there's, based on medical conditions in type 1 diabetic, we have some letter from his endocrinologist that asked to be able to accompany the pre-sentence report as it goes with him to the prison.
You're welcome to attach that as well.
Thank you, Judge. Go ahead and hand it out to you guys.
Yes.
I'm going to make comments, Judge. I was going to really wanted to talk about, and all this time I've represented Mr. Anzalone, not just him, and echo comments that Mr. Riotto made about service and character, having met his client for so long. I was going to talk about Mr. Anzalone's family, and I'm going to do that briefly, but in direct response to the comments, I've been speaking to Mr. Anzalone for months before even the finalization of the investigation and ultimate arrest earlier this year. And Mr. Anzalone, who's standing before Your Honor, ready and able to be sentenced for the worst decisions he's ever made, takes no enjoyment in anything that occurred that evening. He's not that person, and in fact, I believe the pre-sentence report shows that, well, that's a decision that he made, and he's prepared and ready and will be sentenced for it, that the sum and character of Mr. Anzalone is beyond that as well. He's not solely that one incident. And in our system, many times individuals need to and are punished for what ultimately was the worst cautious decision that they made. But Mr. Anzalone takes no pleasure. Repeatedly throughout this case, it's been acknowledged in many ways, up to and including his conviction for manslaughter, that Mr. Anzalone never wished for Mr. Brooks to die. That he acknowledges his role in that cause, and that it's clear from the video about the intent to injure. And we're not in any way negating that. But Mr. Brooks' death and the horrific tragedy that is not something that Mr. Anzalone, in either his actions or after, in any of those moments, it takes any enjoyment whatsoever. The PSI is clear, the letters are clear as to his character outside and in the community. As I said, I could talk more about Mr. Anzalone, but I believe that's set up through those letters in the pre-sentence report. What I've also gotten to know is his wife, his parents, other family members who have come both to our office, us to their homes, and the love and care that they have. And I don't believe anyone at any point would ever allege that those individuals had any involvement or have any fault in this crime. And they too are horrifically injured by this, and that Mr. Anzalone knows as well. It is both his sorrow and his statement that he said about to Mr. Brooks and his family, as well as to his own. And it's reflected as coming through, I believe, in the pre-sentence report and otherwise, as genuine. As they've said, as the government has said at multiple points, Mr. Brooks tragically was not given the opportunity to show who he could be after. And I echo those comments. That is a tragedy. I believe Mr. Anzalone will take every moment of his sentence and if eventual release in showing that his true character is not that day and that he is prepared to serve out that sentence for what he did. Thank you.
Counsel, if you have additional copies of those character letters you wanted, I'll take them. They seem to have become separated from the PSI after it was provided to you.
My apologies and thank you.
Mr. Anzalone, was there anything that you wanted to say prior to being sentenced?
Nobody.
Note for the record that the defendant waived his right to appeal at the time of his plea, so I'm not going over those rights again. I've been at this a long time, and I've seen a lot of terrible things in this room. I've never seen so many lives destroyed in a moment. The defendant is sentenced as follows. As to the conviction for manslaughter in the first degree, the defendant is hereby sentenced to a determinate sentence of 22 years in state prison. That is along with 5 years post-release supervision. In addition, there is imposed a mandatory surcharge, crime victim, and DNA fees, which will total $375. The defendant is committed for the term of the sentence.
Manshaw.
Good morning, Thomas Capezza on behalf of Michael Mashaw.
Good morning, Mr. Capezza. Oh, Mr. Capezza, you're being returned your client's passport. This is the matter of the people against Michael Mashaw, indictment 25035. This matter is on for sentencing today. Back on September 22nd, the defendant pled guilty to 1 count of manslaughter in the second degree, with an agreed upon sentence of 3 to 9 years in state prison, along with mandatory state surcharges. Is that the people's understanding?
It is, Your Honor.
Mr. Capezza, that's your understanding?
Yes, Your Honor, and he has not waived his right to appeal.
Correct, that's my understanding as well. Do the people then move sentence?
We do, Your Honor.
Would you like to be heard?
Briefly, Your Honor, again, we would incorporate the statements made by Mr. Brooks Jr. as well as Mr. Wicks. And this is a negotiated disposition, so I won't belabor many points here, but I do feel that the record needs to be clear that Mr. Mashaw was the sergeant that night. But more than that, he was the sergeant. As we found in the trial, he was solely and individually responsible in his own mind for that use of force on Mr. Brooks. So while Mr. Brooks was being beaten, while Mr. Brooks was deteriorating before his eyes, that was Mr. Mashaw's responsibility. And he did nothing. He didn't help Mr. Brooks. He didn't protect Mr. Brooks. He didn't get Mr. Brooks treatment. He walked out of the room after Mr. Brooks had been stripped down to his underwear, clearly in absolute crisis, and he mocked him. And we saw that, it was captured on video as he looked at Sergeant Tropoli and he arranged his hands as Mr. Brooks's hands were being held up by his head while Mr. Brooks was dying. For all of that, Your Honor, while we understand that Mr. Mashaw never touched Mr. Brooks, he was deeply responsible. And it is important for all of us and for the justice system as a whole that he be held accountable as we've agreed that he would be today. He will deserve every second of the sentence that you will impose. Thank you.
Thank you. How's it, would you like to hear it?
Your Honor, thank you. Mr. Mashaw has accepted responsibility for what occurred, but there's much more to Michael Mashaw than December of that year. Michael Mashaw is devoted to his faith, devoted to his family, devoted to his friends, as evidenced by the character letters that came out, including two letters by two incarcerated individuals who credited Mr. Mashaw for his fine work in guiding them to a better life. The tragic events of December are not in dispute, but there's much, much more to Michael Mashaw than the events of that day. He accepts responsibility and he's prepared to serve his sentence.
Counsel, Mr. Mashaw, was there anything you want to say prior to your sentencing? No, Your Honor. I'll impose the agreed upon sentence. I did review the character letters that were submitted. They speak very well of you, Mr. Mashaw. Appreciate your service to our country. The words of the prosecution are well put here in the sense that some of us got to spend a lot of time watching and rewatching that video in the recent trial of this matter. There's individuals responsible for what they did. I couldn't help but notice as you stood there, while this unfolded. The seal of the state of New York on one shoulder, the American flag on the other shoulder. You were there for us. You were the purpose. The person who had the authority, whose job it was, the reason you were there was to make sure something like this didn't happen. You were in the best position to say stop, and you didn't. For the crime of manslaughter in the second degree, the defendant is hereby sentenced to an indeterminate sentence of imprisonment, having as its minimum 3 years, its maximum 9 years in state prison. In addition, there is imposed a mandatory surcharge, crime victim, and DNA fees totaling $375. The offense committed.
David Walters.
This is the matter of people against David Walters, indictment 25035. This matter is on for sentencing. Back on September 22nd, the defendant pled guilty to one count of manslaughter in the second degree, with the agreed upon sentence being 2 1/3 to 7 years in state prison, along with mandatory state surcharges. Is that the people's understanding?
It is, Your Honor.
Mr. Passalacqua, that's your understanding?
It is, Your Honor.
People then move sentence.
We do.
Would you like to be heard?
Again, briefly, Your Honor. the statements of Mr. Brooks and Mr. Ricks, again, we would incorporate and we would rely on that to speak for Mr. Brooks himself. But one more time, something does need to be said about Mr. Walters himself and what he and his actions and his conduct show about really the incarcerative system as a whole, as it stands. I expect we'll hear that Mr. Walters didn't do anything, that he wasn't in the room very much, and those things may be true, but he was in it, he was around it, he was hearing it, and he saw among the worst portions of the assault, and we know that because we see him on video. And not only did he not do anything, he barely reacted. And I think more than anything else, that is what makes this case so important and what makes it so egregious. Because the violence is bad, and watching a group of people in a position of power abusing and ultimately killing a helpless, restrained man is bad. But what's worse is the indifference about it. What's worse is that there were corrections officers in that room, and Mr. Walters among them, who didn't seem to think that any of this was even out of the ordinary. There was no look of shock. There was no surprise. There was no sense of urgency about any of it. This is routine for them. That, more than anything else, was what we took away from that video. And, Your Honor, that can't be the case. This can't be the routine. This cannot be how incarcerated individuals are treated. And this defendant going to prison, despite not touching Mr. Brooks, won't bring Mr. Brooks back, but it'll disrupt that routine. It will change how those people in those walls view their job. This was not acceptable. What Mr. Walters did was not acceptable. And he needed to be better. And going forward, I hope every corrections officer will be, because of what happens today. And we would ask Mr. Walters to be sentenced to as agreed upon. Thank you.
Pass the line. Thank you, Your Honor. At this point, I believe I've exhausted all that can be said with regard to Mr. Walters in this matter in this venue. Thank you.
Mr. Walters, is there anything that you would like to say prior to being sentenced?
No, sir.
And as to the conviction for manslaughter in the second degree, the defendant is hereby sentenced to an indeterminate sentence of imprisonment having its minimum 2 1/3 years as its maximum 7 years in state prison. In addition, there is imposed a mandatory surcharge, crime victim, and DNA fees, which will total $375. The defendant is committed for the term of the sentence.
Your Honor, may I protest the PSI for the court?
Thank you.